Thanks for your input. Trying to convince me to watch House of Dragon.
I think you mean convincing you.
Welcome to a special episode of the Spooky Screen where Johnny and David try to convince me, Noah, to watch House of Dragons. A little background: I did watch all of Game of Thrones and considered myself a pretty big fan. Um, like most people, I was disappointed in the last season. It felt rushed, and it wasn't a satisfying ending, in my opinion. Um, and then HBO, trying to milk all the cows that Game of Thrones can offer, they did House of Dragon, and I immediately discounted it. Hearing not only getting a little tired of Game of Thrones, not trusting the franchise in a way, feeling a little betrayed from the final season, but also because it's a prequel and I know
Mm.
exactly what happens because
How
it's
do
a
you
prequel.
how do you know what happens?
They say it in the season. We're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm just providing a little background. The reason why I don't watch House of Dragons is two reasons. One, I didn't like how Game of Thrones ended. You can feel however you want to feel about that. That's my personal opinion. And number two, House of Dragons is a prequel, which saps all the tension for me right out of the story because I feel like I know what happens because they say hint at it in the Game of Thrones series itself. So those are my two reasons. David and
Mm.
Johnny, I'm letting you tag team me to try and convince myself if I should watch House of Dragons. That was a bad
Nope, nope,
analogy.
nope.
I'm allowing you
You
guys
double team
try
me.
and convince me to watch House of Dragons. You have the floor.
So, um, I was also a very big um, uh, Game of Thrones fan. I forgot the name for a second because of House of Dragon. Um,
Big
dun
fan.
dun 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 dun. The same
Dun
theme
dun
song.
dun 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 dun
the,
dun.
w- the the intro is way too long, and I don't know how
Oh
they
yeah.
don't cut it. So what I didn't like about the original series, the plot was always interesting and the twists and stuff, but there was always these elements of the movie, the series that you wanted more as the audience, right? They would tease you with all these creatures, these special things that could happen, and they never delivered. They never ever delivered, and that always upset me. Like they would tease out this powerful element or this magic or these dragons, specifically the dragons. So what the original show didn't give me, this show is giving me. So I will say this show includes dragons. And it's not the whole
Mhm.
thing, but it does it in a way that's I think substantial enough. There hasn't been a lot of it in all of the episodes, but I think there's enough of the power dynamic. There's enough creature design, and there's enough of them as a woven part of the story now that they don't feel like a side note. Like, and what's her name? Danny, is that her?
Daenerys.
Daenerys.
Daenerys. Thank you. Like her three dragon thing was like she had three dragons, and we saw them like five times. Like they would like come out of like a basement and be like, "Wah!" like it was just so ludicrous. Like that was her whole power, and they were like a total like back of the story thing. Here, they're a lot more part of the story. Not all of the story
Mhm.
though, not even close to all of the story, but they're at least a real element, and so that's been fun. Plus, I think this series is really focused on a couple of houses. Um, and so far that's been really interesting. Like the characters, they're not perfect. Like I'm not saying this thing demolishes Game of Thrones, but there's at least enough twists and turns and emotional core, and there's some really good characters like the brother of the king, Damon. He's played by a very famous actor whose name is Matt Smith.
Matt Smith, yes.
He's fantastic. Like his character is like by far my favorite, and he doesn't even always say a lot. Like he's just the way he carries himself in the scenes and his expressions and his role. But anyway, there's I think a really nice balance between magic and old world and new world, and the political backstabbing that you want from Game of Thrones, mixed with the some of the power dynamics that I always felt were a little bit lacking from the dragons. And So far, I have not been disappointed, and I've been excited to see each new episode. And I think the one that's coming out next, no spoilers, but I think is about to like really ramp up because of what happened. And I think they laid the groundwork in these first episodes for something really exciting, which I
Okay.
props to them.
So, from what I'm to summarize, what you're saying is that I should watch it because there's dragons,
100%.
more
Yes.
utilization of the dragons, and there's interesting characters.
I'm a big kaiju fan, so dragons are a big part of me. But I think
Obviously.
the characters are interesting. There are a lot of varied, unique, interesting characters. And I
Can
think
I
Game of Thrones does that well. Not every show can carry that many interesting characters. And I can think of an interesting plot for all of them.
Does it bother you that you kind of know what happens to all of them?
I don't know because I didn't
Well, you
memorize.
do know because the Game of Thrones, all the Targaryens are dead except one, right? They get usurped and they all die. So does that bother
This is
you at
also set
all?
like 300 years
No,
in the
no,
past.
yeah, this is so far removed, Noah. Like, you really doesn't even phase you. It's like so far removed. You don't even think about it. I, I haven't thought about that once, Noah. I know it's to come, and you hear Lannister and you hear Baratheon, the names of some of the families
Hmm.
later, but they're not. It's not has nothing to do with that at all. Like the drama
So
is
there's
very relevant to that timeline.
so there's less like relying. You know how like Star Wars, they always bringing out Han Solo or Chewbacca, like baby
Oh,
Chewbacca or
there's none of that.
teenager Chewbacca.
There's
Like
0 so far, 0 of that. Like, they just introduced the religion that was the whole last series, and it's like it's a nascent, like, no one knows it. It's like all the things feel fairly new and fresh for this series because they're from a different era.
so it's not standing on the back of Game of Thrones. It's not
I don't
standing on
feel
its
that way at
back. It's
all.
standing on its own.
I think so.
If this was about like Daenerys's like father and mother, or even her grandfather and grandmother, then I feel like it would have been too close to Game of Thrones. But this is set, I think it's like 1 or 200 years in the past, and I think I have like 4 to 5 points
Oh my
because I've been
goodness.
kind of going.
Oh my
4
god,
to
David.
5?
Count it
No,
do
no,
three.
oh, so I'll do three. So just kind of going back and forth
I have
because Noah,
7 to 12
no,
points.
no, I have a PowerPoint presentation for no, because I have that same fear in prequels also. Noah, like you know what happens to the characters because there's like this plot armor, like there's no real threat to
Mm,
anything because you know how it has to happen, you know how it has to unravel, and
yeah.
there's a little bit of that because you kind of know from watching Game of Thrones, okay, she does never really take the throne because Daenerys is the first. When they say, "Oh, there's never been a woman to on the Iron Throne," so there's like a little bit of that. But I think what's most compelling, and this can be twofold, because Game of Thrones had so many houses and so many characters, because so you could fall in love with whatever character you wanted, and you could hate the rest. And like while you were watching the show, you're like, "Oh, I really don't like these characters, but I have these few other guys that I like." So whenever they pop up on the season, but now you're just focused on like the current kingdom, the current ruling kingdom, and the dynamic in that, and that can be a little frustrating because if you don't care for some of the characters, which some of them I don't, you're like stuck with them. But it's also interesting because you're seeing all of the dynamics and the drama play out. Like you're saying, like it's a prequel, and when you look at a timeline, you could read a history book and you say this major event happened, then this major event happened, then this major event happened. But like doing a microscope on those events and actually seeing it play out
Yeah.
is, I think, is a different thing. And I think that's very interesting because now we're getting to see how these historical events actually played out, or like theoretically played out. And I will say, I totally 100% agree with Johnny. There's more mysticism and more fantasy in like the first
Hmm.
5 episodes
Yeah.
than I would say like a lot of the seasons. Like they had the White Walkers and the was it the Red God,
Yeah.
and like some dragons, but like they're very focusing on like who the Targaryens are and the power that they possess, and they bring it up a lot, like, oh, we have dragons. Like, it's very much a part of them, and you're getting to see their house at like the peak
I think you've
of.
both made good points. I will ask a question. Maybe it's a difficult question for you to answer,
Nothing's
but
difficult when you're Targaryen Lord.
I think the episodes are what, like an hour each, right?
Yeah, like 50 minutes an
So
hour.
this will ultimately end up being 10 hours, right? So from the 6 hours you've watched, David, just round up. Um, w- is it really worth me investing 6 hours of my 6 or 10 hours of my life when I could watch, three really good movies? Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to, because that's how I view it. I view it as time in my, like, I don't have us
Mm.
as fathers, right? We don't have as much time available to us to just watch something whenever we want, right? There's
Oof.
responsibilities. So I would have to invest 6 to 10 hours, because I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say 10 hours. 10 hours of my life to a series that is just okay is a disservice. Is something that I don't want to
I
do, right? I'd
can't
rather watch
believe you're
four
asking.
or five movies
Oh
that are
my
good.
gosh.
I would say invest at least 1 hour into the first episode.
I get it, but listen, it's so ironic you asked that because like you'll make time to watch all these, some of them crappy, I'll say horror movies, just to fill
Well,
in the
crappy
ranks.
in
And
your
and
opinion.
I know, but I feel the same way when I question like why watch so many? And like
Hmm.
I'd rather watch this. Admittedly, I would rather watch the series than
Okay.
most, not all, but some horror movies. Um, but with that said, I don't. You say mediocre because you made a judgment without seeing it already. I think you do have to watch it, and I think you have to watch the season. I think it's a season,
Hmm. Well, I
and
didn't say
so that's
I wasn't judging it as mediocre. I was saying if it's mediocre, right? If it's mediocre, I don't want to waste 10 hours on it just because it's Game of Thrones, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I think the strength of the first couple episodes alone and what they're setting up and building up is worthwhile enough, and it's well
it's
written and
interesting.
well acted enough to at least give it a season.
Yeah,
And
I
if they
agree.
don't stick this season finale, I'm okay with dropping it and not returning to it. But I
What
will
if
watch this
yeah.
one contained
And
season.
and and to
Hmm.
add to that, I similarly to David in parallel started the Rings of Power, and I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Not the biggest in the world, but I'm a big fan of that world. I really enjoy the movies, and
Hmm.
I am struggling to get into that show, and I've dropped it after a couple
Wow.
episodes
That
because
that's
they're
that
way
says a
too
lot,
long.
honestly.
They're way too long. They're not as interesting as this, and this series so far is better than that series. So
Damn. You know.
I will say this too,
Um
Noah. The show has been fairly good at having succinct resolution of what's happening in each episode. Like,
mhm.
it leaves you with enough grasping for the next one, but like, it does. It's not like it doesn't feel like one singularly long thing that you're just getting a snippet. Like each one has a reason you're watching that episode, and
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
some of like they're
Yeah.
jumping timelines for that. Like they're very purposeful about it, and it's been interesting so far.
So, would you say that it's better than Game of Thrones? One quick last question from what you saw. Like, would you
That's a
say,
really
obviously, you
hard
have a
comparison.
long history with Game of Thrones, right? There's, I
Yeah,
don't know how many seasons. There's 7 or 8 seasons, I think. So obviously, it's hard to compare. But I'm saying, from your personal taste, do you
I
find that you enjoy it more overall, like as a package product?
Um,
I think it's very different for me.
that's hard because Game of Thrones was so new when it happened.
I think Game of
Like,
Thrones was promising something more the whole time, and but it never
Mm-hmm.
delivered. But it had this like it feels like it was that toxic ex that you dated that like would make you go probably crazy. You're like they have it all, but then they never delivered. And now you're dating House of Dragons, which is like someone who's
The girl next
pretty
door.
attractive and pretty great, but it's not promising you everything of your wildest dreams, but it's enough to be the perfect spouse. You know, it's like you can't compare the two because one is actually probably better, but the other one made you think the world was going to be
So like
amazing.
you enjoyed the relationship when you're in it, but then it ended really bad, right?
Yeah.
Because at
And
the
this one is
time
just
you were high on life, whereas this one you're kind of like you have very like middle
you're more
expectations because
you're yeah, you have more experience. You know that it might not be that great. but like because of other experiences, but at the same time, like it's delivering on pace, and you're like, okay,
Uh-huh.
well, actually, you know what?
Yeah.
This is good. Like
It's not
I'm not going
promising
to throw
too
this away.
much.
It's not promising too much.
I understand.
That's what it
I
is. It's not
understand.
promising too much. That's
You
right.
you're not you're just kind of you're just enjoying the drama and the acting and the writing. You're like, okay, most of these people are gonna die anyway, so let's just kind of like have fun with it.
They're
Let me
not.
just
I agree, David. They're not promising you the prince that will come, the secret prophecy. Who will it be? That's already talked about. We know where that goes. This is really about the fun of the political drama of this throne. Like it's purely about that, and it's purely about like, and you know that, and so the boundaries are set, and now you get to relax and enjoy the twists and turns and the ups and downs of all
Mhm.
that.
Thanks for your input. Trying to convince me to watch House of Dragon.
I
I
think
think
you
you
mean
both make
convincing you.
convincing me. I think you both made good points. You definitely settled a lot of the fears I had. Um, the 10-hour commitment is the hardest thing for me to get over. I think maybe we'll see. Maybe at the ninth. I don't know.
That's not a good conclusion.
I think at this
I
point,
think right here, right
I
now,
have.
you need to commit.
All right, all right. Here's what I'm gonna say. Here's what I'm saying. At
I'm gonna
this
put a
point,
ring on it. Give me your
I
finger.
have to watch it now, and then we're gonna have to reconvene at after the season and
Yes,
discuss. I think that's what's
Mm.
gonna
that's
happen.
right.
So at this point, I feel committed, even though I'm I will say I'm 70%
Yeah.
convinced. How about that? 70%, and
Okay.
that 30% is mainly me knowing what happens,
Yeah.
and the 10-hour commitment. But you got me. I will watch it, and we will reconvene after this season and discuss. And I will
And
either scream at you or I will hug you and give you kiss as brothers.
the audience will
Or shut
learn,
Dracarys.
and they will learn who the best advice givers are. I guess.
Yeah.
So that's high
The
stakes.
Thanks for
Okay.
listening. Uh this has been the Spooky Screen special episode. Please
Special
like,
edition.
subscribe, and share if you like this episode and you want more of this. Let us know. That's the only way we'll know is if you comment.
Please
So
comment.
please comment and let us know what you think. If you hate it, tell us. We won't do it again. If you love it, we'll do more. So that's how you communicate, by sharing your feelings. This has been the
Sharing is
Spooky Screen.
caring.
Johnny and David successfully convinced me to watch House of the Dragon. I didn't think it could be done, but they did it. And
Ding,
now
ding,
we
ding,
have to
ding,
watch
ding.
the whole season and discuss afterwards. We'll come together again and we will discuss if it was
I think
great,
it'll be good.
terrible, or just that girl that does not promise the middle of the road girl of our dreams.
She's the good girl.
She's the
Or the
good girl
girl
next
who you start
door.
dating and then she becomes like
You
the
guys
hot.
you guys are taking it all out of context. What you
The girl
learn
next door,
is
not the hot model.
the first girl, aka hot model girl, was promising you a life
I
that was
got it. I got it.
never
I got it.
real. You're gonna
Full
live on Mars